Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 7, I believe, of Lego Train Renovations. Now, I've been put off a little bit with doing this video because, well, the J class was very similar to the K class. So I thought there wasn't really much of a reason to do it until now, but actually like a month or maybe a month or two ago, I ended up updating the J-Class locomotive even more, so now it is a lot more different and a lot more accurate in my opinion towards the real J-Class locomotive. So in today's video I wanted to share with you guys all the changes that happened with this beautiful looking locomotive, and a brand new boiler type was actually built in real life. That's right, the cheese slope boiler, which you can see over there, was actually surprisingly able to be built in real life and had all the pieces. It is a little weak on the bottom, but that's because I didn't have the pieces to make that strong. So eventually I will get the right pieces to make that part strong. The J-Class also now has working pistons too, which I'll also show you how I did that as well. So without further ado, let's get into today's renovation episode and see what changed with this beautiful locomotive. Alright, so if we turn our attention towards the computer here, I can actually show you some of the changes, or at least most of the changes, that happened to the J-Class locomotive. So let's zoom in to the middle of the boiler here. So as you can see that the boiler is actually slightly smaller than the bigger boiler, just like the real J-Class. How the front is a little bit more larger than the middle section of the boiler. Now, there's not as much piping here. That's because piping is a little bit annoying to do on the computer, but don't worry, it is on the real J-Class, which you can see right beside me. There's going to be another piping that goes here, and goes all the way down and clips into this piece there, just like on the real J. And the J-Class, I actually managed to find a way how to shorten the front of the J-Class. You can see here, and it actually, believe it or not, still works on the tight rails, which was my biggest concern when doing this. I thought the reason why I didn't do this in the very beginning was because I didn't think the J could withstand the tight curves that Lego has. But nope, surprisingly it actually works. As long as you get rid of this front block here and you just have the wheel here, there's just barely enough room where it won't hit the pistons nor the cow catcher, which is fantastic. That has been done to real life J beside me as well. And it's a lot more nicer now. The smoke deflectors have also been shortened by a total of 1 whole stud. So they used to be 8 studs long, but now it's 7. And that's going to also happen to my R-Class locomotive, since I recently found out the smoke deflectors were a little bit too long. But it's a very easy fix, and there's going to be another tiny easy fix I'm going to do to my R-Class as well later down the line, just to make it a little bit more accurate to the real R-Class locomotive. But anyways, back to the J. So now, with the small boiler, you couldn't actually have this be 6 wide anymore, because then you would have slight overhanging like the front of the boiler here. So instead, I had to then shorten this whole thing by a width by 1 stud. So now this is 5 studs wide instead of 6, which actually works fantastically. It looks a little bit more like the real J. And as you can see, there is a slight gap now in between the window and the boiler end, more like the real J-Class too. Unlike most of my steam engines, where the brick goes exactly to the window here, without any extra bit of a gap there. But it looks really good. Now, in order to achieve that, since this is now off-centered, I then had to apply jumper plates in order to actually get the boiler to be like that. And since it's off-centered again, it's a little bit more difficult to make it connect to the cab, but don't worry, I used a pretty smart technique. Basically, I applied a jumper plate in the wall of the J-Class's cab, right? And then I had a black tile go into that and attach to that jumper plate. So that way it's attached to the cab as well. And because it's tiled off, the studs don't have to perfectly align. As long as there's a gap for it to slot into, it works just as well as a normal connection, pretty much. And you also have to use a little bit of a special connection point to attach it to the front of this boiler as well. Now, one thing that my J-Class has on the computer that does not have in real life is this new cab. It slightly was shortened in length by one stud. My J-Class in real life is actually 6 studs wide, the cab, but here it's 5 wide. Now, I did want to add this to my real one, but it was a little bit of a hassle at the time, so it's kind of been left. And then one thing is the tender. The tender looks absolutely incredible. I love the way the tender looks on the new J. Since it's an oil burner, got a little bit of a pump system there, or whatever you'd call that. New connection point here as well, just so I can save magnet couplings, 2 magnet couplings to be used on other things like carriages or other trains. So, and then a whole new design for the bogies here, for the detail, which looks quite nice as well. I really like it. I took inspiration from other train builders when it came to this. So, yeah, so thank you for whoever came up with that idea and design. It actually looks quite nice. I've never actually used this technique before, so I wanted to give it a go, and it looks great. It really does. So yeah, the J-Class looks quite nice indeed. This is more of a rectangle now instead of like a square. The black, because before that probably looked more like a square than a rectangle. And we also bumped down this middle bit here and had the edges be taller than the middle bit, just like the real J. Some more extra bit of details on top of the oil burner, and I believe the whole tender was completely redesigned. Looks much better than the original, which I actually do have the original here. This might be a bit tricky to show off. Let's see. So here's the original. As you can see, the front has no front detailing. I might just get rid of the whole J-Class entirely. Just give me a sec. Alright, so as you can see, the front dips in a little bit and has some extra bit of detail and a little steering wheel. On the front of this J-Class boiler, well, tender, you can see there's absolutely no detail there. There's a little bit of a dip in on the oil tanker in the front there, but I haven't done any more other than that. Now, if we turn our attention towards the back of the tender, we can also take a look what I mean about the tender back looking more rectangle in the black area. So, here is the back of the original. As you can see, it looks a lot more square, doesn't it, than the rectangle there. So that's a lot more nicer to the real J. And there's also buffers, as you can see, on the new J-Class tender design, where there's absolutely nothing here at all. The top also hasn't been dented in either, unlike the new tender here as well. As you can see, it's been dented down, where the entire surface is completely smooth and tiled off. The detail is also very minimal. Not much is on the J-Class's original tender design, where there's a lot more detail on the new tender design as well. You can see a lot more detail has been added to make this look a lot more nicer. And finally, if we turn our attention towards the bogies of the J-Class locomotive, zoom in there, you can see it is a completely different design towards the original J-Class bogie design. Me personally, I definitely prefer this one over the original, but it wasn't bad. Alright, now let's show you all those changes in real life, or at least most of them. And I'll show you the new piston design that I used for my J-Class turn. Here is the J-Class in real life. Now, as you can see, it's got a slightly smaller boiler here, so you can see the cheese slope boiler. It looks really nice. You can also see that the cab is 6 wide here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of 5, which will end up shortening that eventually. More piping detailing that actually goes into a little hole here, just like the real J. I didn't quite have a piping there for that system, but eventually we'll get that going. Looks really nice. You can see the jumper plates below those clip pieces. You also have to tile this off too, so that way you didn't have to mess around with the studs connecting off grid. And if you have a look at the pistons there, you can see that you go in and out with a little bit of a sacrifice. Basically, instead of this piece attaching to this wheel, we detached it and made it go into the piston design. So the front wheel still moves, it just doesn't have any connecting rods attached to it. So yeah, but I reckon it still looks really good. And if you turn your attention towards the front of the J-Class here, as you can see, look at how much nicer that looks. So much more cleaner, and the wheel fills up that gap so much better than it originally did. Very nice. Along with the smoke deflectors also being shortened by 1 whole stud. Now, let's have a look at the front of the J-Class here. You can see the front of the J-Class has been remade. So there's a little tiny gap now instead of a large one that actually deformed the front of the boiler a little bit. So with this new and improved boiler that's more round all around, it shortened the J-Class in height by a whole stud. By a whole plate actually. More nicer looking front detailings here with the new buffer beam, and that's also being transferred to light grey too, since I really prefer the light grey look than just plain old black, if that makes any sense. And of course we kept the little injectors that go into the pistons as well. I'm not sure exactly what these are called, but I know they like travel the steam down into the pistons, and the escaping air or escaping steam is what causes the chuffing sound on a steam locomotive. At least that's what I believe. The exhaust and intake valves as the pistons go back and forth. But I think that's how it works. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, as you can see, this side is still not that much detail. And all this detail is a lot more accurate to the real J-Class instead of just random studs, circle studs like that, all over the running board like the original design had. And the start to the new coupling system at the back here, the exact same one used for the A2 class on the last episode of LEGO Train Renovations. So that's pretty much the J-Class logo. It looks very, very nice, a lot nicer than it previously did when it was originally built. So what did you guys think of this J-Class locomotive redesign and LEGO Train Renovations episode 7? I honestly really love the way how the J looks now. Looks really nice. Love the detail, love the piping. Love the more proportionally accurate stuff towards the real J-Class. Overall, it's absolutely stunning. And I can't wait to do this exact same stuff in terms of the front, ends and boiler changes towards the K-Class in real life. Since I have already done that on the computer, I just need to fix up the tender. So, yeah. But yeah, I hope you guys have all enjoyed this LEGO Train Renovations episode 7 for J-Class. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys all next time. Bye!